How's it going and welcome back to the channel. It's TheSketchMonkey here, and this video is all about the Hyundai Prophecy, one of the most interesting concepts of this year, and I'm excited about it for a number of reasons that I'm going to cover in this video. Even though it's an incredibly beautiful sculpture, there are always a few features I like to explore and maybe change. I'm going to talk about what those design features are, of course, in this video as well, and eventually redesign them too. So nowadays it's hard to stand out and be unique in the automotive world. As I've said in previous videos, there are only so much you can do with a century-old design layout, which is the car when you have the engine in the front, then you have a transmission and you want to fit 4 passengers in there with some luggage space. There are only so much you can do with that package. However, looking at the Prophecy here, I get the feeling that the level of satisfaction amongst the designers was very high working on this car. It's not trying to come up with the next cool line or styling feature in the body of the car. It doesn't try to add more to set itself apart. Instead, what it's doing the complete opposite here. Less is so much more. The first time I saw the teaser image of the Prophecy from a slight rear view, one car came to mind, and that was the legendary Datsun 240Z. The rear has the same dip as the 240Z, the same beautiful roofline that stretches all the way back to the rear lights. The rear graphics themselves also sit very low to the ground, and that's also very similar to the 240Z. Hyundai says that the pixelated lights will carry over to production versions, and it will eventually become a big part of the design identity of Hyundai. And how cool is that? Later in this video, I'm going to explore the graphic design possibilities this could have in the future. It's such a smooth design that's broken only by the transparent rear spoiler, which houses the brake lights and the rear view camera. It's a 4-door all-electric vehicle inspired by the streamlined design era of the 1920s and 30s. And as you can tell by the wheel design, it's also taken inspiration from the nautical world with its propeller-like wheel design. These are not only great to look at, but also very functional as they propel the hot air surrounding the brakes. The roofline in combination with the shoulder line gives the Prophecy a super sleek look, which I really like. This does, however, cause some issues when it comes to aerodynamics and safety at high speeds. If you're old enough to remember when the first TT came out, the Audi TT that is, first when it came out, it didn't have a tiny spoiler on the back. And this caused a lot of problems and a lot of very bad accidents at high speeds, and this all had to do with a very sleek rear end, and there is no wing to catch the air going over the car and push the rear down, which made the car very unstable in the rear at high speeds. And looking at the Prophecy, it does suffer the same fate as the TT, so they couldn't have the Prophecy without a rear spoiler on it. But at the same time, I think this spoiler, it doesn't really bother me. It breaks up the almost too sleek surface of the car, and on top of that, it's transparent with integrated red LEDs, which makes it kind of look like the LEDs is floating above the rear end of the car. It gives it a very cool look. I also love the pixelated lights, both in the front and the rear of the Prophecy. It complements the otherwise extremely fluid design very well and adds kind of contrast to the graphics. In addition to those lights, the Hyundai badge in the front and the letters in the rear are all lit up, something we're starting to see more and more amongst car manufacturers such as Mercedes, and you also have Mazda doing this for a while now. Moving on to the interior of the Prophecy, it's very dark themed, which I personally like. Dark interiors always feel cozier. But the inspiration for the interior design was not only to make it cozy here, but also resemble the black volcanic beaches only found on a few Korean islands. This design was integrated as a topographical feature on the floor of the car, and it looks very cool in combination with this beautiful blue color. As with the outside, lighting is a big deal of the interior as well. There are large LEDs all along the sides of the interior, and another thing to mention is there is no steering wheel. Instead, you command the car with 2 separate joysticks on each side of the driver's seat. Not sure I'm ready for that feature yet though. So now let's jump into Photoshop, and I want to show you both the redesign and the single, I don't want to call it issue, but the thing is, one thing that I want to experiment with and see if it looks better or maybe not is what we're going to do right now. So we're going to jump into Photoshop. I'm going to show you the redesign and the graphical ideas you can have with the LEDs in the rear here. So let's talk about the design of the Prophecy here and what I kind of want to change just for the fun of it and see how that is going to turn out. So what I want to do here is I want to keep the very clean lines of the Prophecy, but I want to have a structured shoulder line and have that stick out a little bit further from the rest of the body of the car. As you can see in the rear, we have these very wide fenders, and I kind of want to have the same width as those fenders, have that width follow all along the shoulder as well and into the front fender, and then eventually into the front bumper. So that's where I'm trying to experiment with here. But the really cool thing about this Prophecy is I think this design language, or Hyundai in general with this car, they are 10-15 years ahead of the curve. I've said it before, I think we've reached the point where we can't style the cars anymore. We've reached the point where we've done all the styling cues that we can do, all the lines and all the angles and sharpness and everything like that. We've reached a point where we can't really push it any further. So now we're going to start rolling back those features and move into a more simplistic design with very clean, simple lines, just as the Prophecy here. And on top of that, what Prophecy does very well is it keeps the identity of the brand in the lines, but it mixes that up with very strong graphical features, which is the rear lights and the front headlights as well. On top of that, you have the integrated beautiful spoiler in the back. And I think this strategy is going to apply to a lot more car manufacturers in the future. So here is the result. I'm not sure if I prefer the redesign over the original. I actually think I prefer the original here. This is just some fun experiment that I wanted to see how it was going to turn out because I was curious about it, but the original still looks very, very good. You can really appreciate the lines of this car from a straight top view. Graphically, this is the really cool part about the Prophecy, in my opinion, is if you think about this whole rear end with all of these LEDs, have you ever thought about how customizable this could be? Maybe you can even have an app on your phone where you decide how you want your rear end of your Prophecy to look like. For example, I've made a few designs here that I want to show you. So this is design number 1 that we can have, which is the standard. I think this is the standard Prophecy. You have 2 light beams just like that, and then you can have the indicators be whatever LEDs you want. Very clean, and it follows the C-pillar down to the bottom of the car. It looks good. Then we have design number 2. So if you want to, you might want to customize the rear lights to look something like this. And the thing is, when you have different options like this in such a large graphical area of the surface of the car, it changes the whole feeling of the rear end. This looks more planted now than with design number 1, for example. And then we can go on to design number 3, which is just a vertical or horizontal line that stretches from one fender as far you can go in this graphical element, which are the LEDs of the car, and all the way to the other side. And this just creates a wider look for the car, and it also looks very cool. And then you can have the indicator either being the lower corners of the LED surface, or you can have them be the light bars as well. Whatever you want, you can customize this in your app. I think that would be a really cool idea. Or maybe you could have it be something like this, where the whole top half of the entire field is lit up as a brake light, and then you have the indicators being these pillars that kind of cuts into this field of red. The last design I made, it looks like this, and this is, so you have the upper field being the brake light, and then you have almost an arrow shape for each side of the indicator. So it lights up the entire section of that field. And I think this looks pretty cool as well. Just an idea, but this seems possible to do when you have, in fact, all of these LEDs that you should be able to have some fun with and customize to fit your own style and your own personality. I think that could be a very cool selling point for Hyundai in the future, since they are planning on integrating these LEDs in production cars in the future. And that's it for this video, guys. Thank you so much for staying until the end. Let me know what you think about this Hyundai Prophecy. Is it too simplistic and too sleek in your opinion? Should they have gone a little bit bolder than this, or is the fact that they actually made it this sleek, is that a bold statement in itself? So many questions. Let me know what you think about it in the comments below. I'm TheSketchMonkey. Thanks again for watching this video until the end. If you did enjoy it, hit the like button. If you're new to the channel, feel free to subscribe. I will see you in the next video.